functions. So it is not going to be a very long session as last time. We had extremely long session. Today, I'll try and finish it in 1 hour, 10 minutes time, and then we'll have question answers. First of all, thank you very much for joining in. It is amazing to see the response. And we have 228 people who have registered, and there are 30 different locations from where the registrations have been done. The entire idea of these workshops are just to share the knowledge, and it is an open platform where everyone's suggestion and views are important. Okay, so we start with the session. As you can look at the first slide in front of you, this itself gives you a pretty good idea about functions. I have taken 2 functions here, and below that I have called these functions. So we are going to learn about user-defined function. So as far as the curriculum is concerned, it is not much in the functions. We have to learn about scope, parameter passing, mutable and immutable properties of data objects, passing strings, lists, tuples, dictionaries to functions, default parameters, positional parameters, and return values. Functions using libraries, mathematical functions, and string functions. As all of you know, that function is nothing but a sequence of statements that performs some specific computational task. A function is a named unit of the program, which can be called in any part of the program from the point of its definition. It helps to avoid again and again writing the same set of statements for performing the same task on different set of inputs or values. In Python, the function requires def keyword in the beginning, and the statements inside def are going to be compounded in indented form. And the def statement will be terminated with colon, the header, just like if, while we have been doing. So this is on the left-hand side, you have the syntax. On the right-hand side, a simple example of function is there where we have A, B, C as parameters, first as the name of the function, and 3 statements. One is printing twice of A, second is printing 3 times B, and third is printing C times dash. As far as the scope of identifiers are concerned, you must have noticed that in Python, the highest priority is given to the local most identifier. So L means local, E means enclosing, G means global, and B means built-in. In built-in, you have examples as print, input, len, type, and ID. In built-in, we don't count keywords because keywords are not to be used as identifier. However, the built-in names can be used as identifier. So you can see here, there is one built-in as ID, which is used in Python. If I give name to my global variable with the name ID, it will be allowed. And within a function, once again, I can write ID. It will be allowed. It will be enclosing. And within this function, if I define one more function, in that once again, I can use ID. So in the program, inside this portion of the program, ID will be 45. In this part of the program, excluding this local part, ID will be 35. And excluding this particular portion, the ID will be 25. So this particular illustration clearly shows that local gets the highest priority and built-in gets the least priority, because whatever is available in the innermost module of the Python program, that gets seen by the localmost module. So this is what is required to be learned. We can understand this like this also, that scope of variables or identifiers move from local to built-in. So local is the name used as identifier in a function, may be enclosed inside another, and then enclosing is nothing but the names of identifiers in enclosing function in a Python code, then global is nothing but names used as identifier on top of a Python code. That means outside all the functions. And then built-in is nothing but names already reserved by Python for a specific purpose come under built-in. So these names are nothing but identifier, is simply a name given to objects. Everything in Python is an object. Name is a way to access objects in Python. This is very first example of function where we see the order in which the execution takes place. Think about, we are writing a code in which we have defined a function with the name wish, and we have two statements, good and day. Unless and until we call this function, the function will not execute on its own. So if you run this particular code, the very first statement which is going to be executed in this program is going to be this, which is calling function wish. So from here, the second statement to be executed is def wish, and then third statement to be executed will be good and then day. After performing fourth statement, it will come back to in sequence next statement after the first call. So this is going to be the second statement getting executed, and second statement is going to be calling in sequence. If you see, it is going to be the sixth statement to be executed, seventh statement to be executed, eighth statement to be executed, and once the second call is over, you will come back and you will be executing in sequence at the ninth step, last statement like this. So your output is going to be good day from the first call, good day from the second call, and once both these calls will be over, the last star 4 times dashes and star will be displayed. Now, what we can do in function and what we can't do in function, that is very important, in what order the definition should be present. Ideally, the definition of the function should be on top of the program. If at all you try putting function somewhere else in the program, obviously, if you try calling it before, you will get an error. So if I remove the first 2 calls, the function will start working. But if you will call it before its definition, obviously it is not going to work. So basically, if you try doing that, then you will be getting error as line 1, name error, name wish is not defined. So if you define function in any part of the program, it can be called and executed only by the statements written after the point of its definition, and so it is not considered as a good programming practice to define functions randomly anywhere in the program. Ideally, it should be defined in the beginning of the program. This is another example of the similar kind where we have a parameter passed, and the parameter passed is nothing but a string type parameter. So if we are passing morning, morning is received by MSG variable and it is displaying good in inverted comma will be displayed as it is, and whatever you have passed as MSG here, that will be displayed next to it. So in the first call, it is going to be combining good and morning together. In the second call, good and day together. In the third call, good and evening together. And in the last call, good and night together. So this is what happens when you pass a simple parameter to the function and execute it. This is another example where we are passing numeric values and we are trying to find out area of triangle. So if we are passing 3 values, 3 going as A, 4 going as B, 5 going as C, and the calculation is done. And you can notice that next to CM, I have again pulled down this symbol, which is a square root symbol. As I told you that it supports Unicode as well as ASCII. So any character you can pull from Unicode or ASCII, it will be displayed as it is. So centimeter square is displayed here. So this particular function we have written only once, and we are able to calculate area of 3 different triangles. Next, whatever we can do in normal program without a function, we can make use of all those commands inside the function also. So this is an example where we can see that we are making use of if statement within a function. So we are passing 92, check, and this 92 is received by the function as marks. If the marks are more than 90, it is displaying scholarship granted, and if marks are not greater than 90, it is going to display a message as reappear for the test. So when we are passing 92, it is going to display scholarship granted. If we are passing 87, it is going to show reappear for the test. If we are taking input from the user for marks, and if the marks entered by the user is 98, it is going to show scholarship granted. Next, once again, a similar kind of example where marks is passed, and accordingly, the marks as well as grades are displayed. So here, M1 is passed, received by function as marks, and second time, M2 will be passed and received by marks in the function, and accordingly, the output will be displayed. So first time when we passed 96, according to if-else structure, it is going to show A as the grade, and when we are passing 55, sorry, so it is going to display grade as T. Next, think about we have two parameters, and one parameter we are passing as integer, another parameter as character, and if at all the first parameter passed is greater than 2, it is supposed to display n times ch, and if the value of n is not greater than 2, it should display line cannot be drawn. Next, this is an example where we are deciding on which ride to be rightly fit for the person, and we are passing age of the person. So first time we are passing 67, and we are displaying a message as slow and smooth swinger. And if we are passing 5 as the parameter, it is showing you kids ride, which is coming from here. And if we are passing 21 as the parameter, it is going to be fast track ride. And when we are passing 38, it will be somewhere here, which is going to be up and down hopper. This is another example where we are making use of two functions. One function is called from another. So you can see the first statement to be executed in this particular program is going to be box, call for box, where we are having first parameter as integer. We have a character, which is a star, and 7. So here 4 is considered as height and 7 is considered as width. We are going to draw a box with the help of this symbol. So while making box, top and bottom lines, I'll be drawing with the help of another function. This function's role is just to simply display n times the character which you have passed. Whereas the role of the box function is to draw on top a line, and if the height of the box is more than 1, then it is going to run a loop where it is going to display ch on both the sides, and if your width is only 1, then it is going to display single character, and if it is more than 1, then on both the sides it is going to show the character, so that inside the box you will have a hollow space. So for creating that hollow space, I am displaying space w minus 2 times. That is, if we have size of this as 5, there will be 3 spaces. So we have to write 3 multiplied by spaces. And then the last thing what is going to be displayed in the box is going to be star. So while making box, what we have kept in mind? We have kept in mind the height, the character with the help of which the box will be made, then width, horizontally how many characters it will require. And as soon as we enter in the box function, we first of all draw a line. This is going to be the top line. And after drawing top line, you decide whether you have to draw further or not based on whether the height is greater than 1 or not. If height is greater than 1, then you have to first of all draw both side lines. And for that, if the width is 1, you just have to display 1 character. If width is more than 1, then in that case, the character will be displayed on both the sides, and in the middle, there will be number of spaces depending on the width. So it is going to width minus 2, number of spaces in between. And then when this will be over, you will be drawing the bottom line. So this is how you are drawing a rectangle or box, okay, with the help of, so this is a text box with the help of function. Next, let's display a sequence using function. So we are passing 3 parameters here, starting and endpoint and the step. So if we pass 2 here, 2 will become start, 20 will be end, and step will be 3. So if I am passing 2, 20, and 3, it is going to display. Now here, it is not end plus 1, and that is why in the for loop, we'll be putting end plus 1 here, so that 20 is going to be inclusive in the range of the sequence. So it is going to display 2 plus 3, 5, 5 plus 3, 8, 8 plus 3, 11, 11 plus 3, 14, and so on. In the same way, if I pass 7, 70, and 10, this particular function will generate a sequence which is going to have a gap of 10. So 7, 17, 27, and so on will be the sequence. In the last example, where we are passing 4, 20, and 5, so it is going to display 4, 4 plus 5, 9, 9 plus 5, 13, 13 plus 5, 18. And after 18, there will be, so obviously that will not come in the for loop. Now let's understand about the mutable and immutable behavior of parameter. So if at all you are passing two parameters and you are making any change in the values of these parameters, for example, in this case, P is assigned as 100, Q is assigned as 200. When I am passing P and displaying P and Q, it is going to be 100 and 200. When I call this particular function, P will be going as A, Q will be going as B. That means 100 and 200 came here, and A will become A into 2, that is 200, and B will become 201. So inside the function, when we are displaying the values of A and B, they will be shown as 200 and 201. As soon as the function call will be over, there will be no effect on values of P and Q. They will be originally present here. So basically, whatever changes happened in A and B, they are local to this function only. So that is what is the immutable behavior of integer type parameter in this particular case. So P and Q will remain with 100 and 200. Let's see one more example. Now this example of immutable parameter is going to be from string. Let's assume F is first name and L is last name. So first name is Ami and L is Virk. If I pass this parameter in print, it will be Ami and Virk will be displayed. Once I am calling this function where I am passing F to first and L to last, and inside the function, I am adding last with first along with a space in between. So inside the function, if I am displaying the output for first, it is going to be AmiVir. Whereas when we come out of this function and display the value of F, there will be no effect of that change which has happened in FL name function. So it is going to display the output of F as Ami only. It is not going to be AmiVir because it is a immutable parameter. One more call, let's pass L as the first name and F as the last name. So inside the function, the changes will happen and accordingly Virk Ami will be displayed. Whereas as soon as the function call will be over and you try and display the value of L, it will remain Virk. So string as well as integer, you saw that they being immutable data types, while passing to parameter, they will continue this behavior. One more immutable example you can see here, where we have a tuple. Tuple, as you know, tuple is a immutable parameter. So we have one tuple as Ami and Sam, another tuple as Tom and Ram, and then we are displaying the values of A and B separately. So two tuples are displayed next to each other here. When I am calling all-in-one function, A going as sec A and B going as sec B. So sec A plus equal to sec B, when it is going to display sec A, the content will be combined together. So Ami, Sam, Tom, and Ram will become part of a single tuple, which is named as sec A. But the change which has happened in sec A will not impact A at all. So if after this, if you are displaying the value of A, it will remain Ami and Sam. Second time when I am calling in the similar way, this time I am passing B as sec A and A as sec B. So obviously sec A plus sec B plus equal to sec B is going to display the value of sec A as Tom, Ram, Ami, and Sam. And obviously in the previous time also, as this did not impact the actual parameter, here also there will be no change in B. B will remain top and Ram. Now let's look at this example where we have passed a mutable parameter, which is list. So A is a list, B is a tuple because we are not bothered about B here because B is not part of any change. So if I'm passing in all-in-one function A and B together, I'm allowed to add the content of B in A, and as soon as content of B is added in A, that will be treated as a list only. So sec A is modified as ME, Sam, Tom, and Ram. So when you come back after calling this function, the value of the content of A will change and the change will be reflected in A. And that is how you see ME, Sam, Tom, and Ram. This is another example of mutable parameter, that is list. Here we are having P containing 100 and 200. And when I'm displaying, obviously 100 and 200 is displayed. When I'm passing this to a function in which I make changes in the individual content of the list, A0 is multiplied by 2 and A1 is added with 1. So if you notice, this is a similar kind of example which you have already seen in case of tuple. This change was not reflected, but in this case, when you come back after calling the calc function, when you try printing the value of P, it is going to show the same change which was reflected inside the function. So 200 and 201 will be displayed. Now, immutable parameter. So you can see here, if the same behavior we want here to happen, it is not going to show change. So you have a tuple 100 and 200, and you have, when you print values of P, it is going to be 100 and 200. When you call calc function, so obviously for making this change, you have to turn it into a list temporarily so that you make these changes, but these changes will have their effect only within the function. Outside the function, when your call will be over, the original values of tuple will be displayed. So if you compare it with the previous example, it is identical to that example. Here the changes are reflected because we passed list, and here the changes are not reflected as we passed tuple. Next, now let's look at one more mutable parameter, which is dictionary. So when we are talking about dictionary, as we have already learned that dictionary is a mutable data type. So it is going to behave as a mutable parameter. So we have two dictionaries here. In the first dictionary, roll number is 1, name is Raj, marks 75, and status is star. And the second dictionary containing roll number as 3, name as Ken, marks as 60, status as star. If I am calling the function raise marks and I'm passing the dictionary and one integer parameter, so inside the raise mark function, I am changing the marks by that much of percentage which is asked. So it is going to be 5% more. So 100 plus P divided by 100 will increment marks by 5% for the child. And if at all, if it is changing, it is going to modify status to change. The default status was star. So inside the function, I am not requiring to display these changes because we are passing S as a mutable parameter. So when you come out and you display value of S1, it will carry the changes. The same changes are going to happen in S2 also. In S2, we are making change by 10% and status to change. So look at the final result. In the final result, your marks from 75 changed to 78.75, status changed from star to changed, marks from 60 changed to 66, and status from star changed to changed. So this shows that dictionary also is giving that change reflected. Next is how to return results from a function. So basically parameter help you to enter content inside a function, and return statement helps you to move out the content from the function, right? Your mutable parameter help you to enter the content as well as take out the content. And this is another way of taking out content from the function, which is through return. So this is how that syntax will change. The last statement of the function will be return, in this particular example, you can see the difference between the normal function and the function which is returning result. If it would have been normal function, I would not have allowed to put it inside a print statement. Here I am putting it inside print statement because at the end this function is returning some result that needs to be displayed. So when I'm passing 2 comma 3, it is going to have 2 plus 3 to the 6, sorry, 6 plus 2 is going to be 8. So 8 is going to be returned here. So when you are printing it, it is going to show you result as 8. Here, when A is 10 and B is 25, you can just pass A and B as the parameter. If the function would not have returned over there, I would have written directly expression A comma B. But as this function is expected to return a result, that result has to be stored in some variable or can be displayed directly in the output statement. So in this case, the second case, we are making use of a variable where this particular content is dumped. So this time when we are passing 10 and 25, it is going to be 25 into 2, which is 50. 50 plus 10 is going to be 60. 60 will be returned as a result, dumped into variable called C, and when we will be printing C, it will be showing 60. Second example of similar kind, here we are repeating the example of area. In that example, we were displaying the area within the function, and this time, in this case, we are making use of return statement. Now, what is the advantage? The children immediately ask you, what is the advantage of returning the result instead of printing the result within the function? So this is the advantage you can show that in this case, our aim is different. We are interested in finding out the total area of the following figure made up of triangles. So we have 3 different triangles. You can see there is a small triangle on the top, there is a medium-sized triangle on the side, and the base is made up of a big triangle. So we have their measurements with us. So S1 carrying 3, 4, 5 as their the sides, and S2 is carrying 5, 12, and 13 as sides, and S3 is carrying 7, 24, and 25 as the size. So I'll calculate their areas with a single function area, and their result will be accumulated in variables S1, S2, and S3. The total area will be nothing but S1 plus S2 plus S3. In the previous example, this kind of reuse of the result would not have been possible. So this is what you have to convey to them. Whenever some result is expected from the program and that result you want to reuse, in that case return is better. And if you don't require that result to be reused in any other expression or operation, in that case it is better to display within the function itself. Like in this example, it would have been better that we would have taken the result out and made it possible. Next example, where we are calculating simple interest. In this also, return is important. You can see the example number 2. In this first print statement is fine. In this case, if I would have written this in the print statement here without returning the result, it would have worked fine. But if you look at the second example within this code, where we are assigning PRT as this, and then we are calculating simple interest with the help of this formula, returning the result inside a variable SI, and then we are adding it with the principal amount, and at the end we are showing the user the total amount to be paid. So basically I am reusing the result in some other expression. So in this case, once again, if you would have used print statement within the function, it would not have helped you because you wanted to use the result in some other expression. This is once again an example where reusability can be seen. The first function is calculating income tax on the basis of some conditions. Second case, allowance is calculated on some conditions. And then we are asking the user to enter the value of basic salary, and we calculate IT and AL, that is income tax and allowance, with the help of the 2 functions. And to calculate in-hand salary, we can make use of these results which have come out from these 2 functions. So once again, in this example also, you can see if I would have used print statement within the functions, the use of the result would not have been. Next example is calculate and return grade from function. In this case, suppose you want to display result in a particular format. That means you want to use the result to be displayed in a particular format. Like in this case, I am displaying result as student 1 marks is this and grade is this. So I am writing a function as grader. So within the print statement only, I can call this function as grader M1. So on the basis of marks, grade will be displayed within this print statement. This is the example, if you remember, we have done in while doing list, how to swap first and second half of list using function. Earlier, we just were able to do this for one particular list. Here, once you have written the code inside a function with the name half swap, you can have any number of lists on which the similar operation can be done. So here we are simply swapping the first and second half of list. So you look at the first example, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So 40, 50, 60 in the first part, and 10, 20, 30, 70 in the second part. In the same way, the second list is 12, 34, 56, 65, 43, 23. So second half has become the first half, and first half has become second half. And it can be done simply by swapping 0th element with n by 2th element and 0 plus 1th element by n by 2 plus 1th element, and so on. So this way we can swap the first half and the second half. The advantage of using function here is, in the earlier example, when there was no function, we were able to do it only for one list. And if we wanted another list to be swapped, in that case, we would have rewritten the same code. In this case, the code for swapping we have written only once. And even if we have 10 different lists of different sizes, we would have performed the same operation. This is another example which we have already done while doing list, where we are supposed to swap the adjacent elements of the list. So you can see here the adjacent elements are swapped. So 10 and 20 became 20 and 10, 30 and 40 became 40 and 30, 50 and 60 became 60 and 50. And as this is the last element, and it cannot be swapped with another element, so it will remain as it is. This is even number of elements, so here everything will be equally distributed. So 12, 34, 34, 12, and 56, 65 will become this, and 43, 23 will become. For this also, we have used a function, a single function. Even if we would have used 3, 4, 5, any number of lists, the same function would have helped us to perform these operations. Now, this is something very interesting. A function, normally in, if you talk about C++ or other languages, normally the functions which are returning results are capable of returning a single result at a time. In Python, you can return multiple results also. So you can see here, this example, I'm accepting a parameter value from the user, and whatever value the user is entering, that is passed as parameter. And this parameter is named as some parameter. And in var1, I am multiplying 5 with this parameter, and var2, I am multiplying 3 with the parameter. So when I am returning var1 and var2, here in two variables at the same time, I can dump both the values which are returned back. So you can see here, we entered the value as hello. So when I came back, and v1 and v2 got displayed in two different lines. So v1 has 5 times hello, and v2 has 3 times hello. Second time, when I am passing 50 as the parameter in some parameter, so 50 multiplied by 5 will become 250, 50 multiplied by 3 will become 150 when I am returning the results in v1 and v2, and this time when I am displaying them one next to each other, it will be displaying 250 and 150. So this is a wonderful example where you can see that at the same time, the function is able to return more than one results. This is another example where you can see that multiple results are returned, and this time the multiple results are of string type, and they are assigned with the help of variables. So you are asking the user in this particular example to enter the designation code. It may be director, so you'll be typing D. It may be manager, you'll be typing M. It may be executive, you may be typing E for that, and accountant, you may be typing A for that. So once the user enters, the benefits function is called. Inside the benefits function, the designation code will be checked. If it is D, C will become BMW. That means the director will get BMW, and house, he'll be getting a bungalow. And when he is manager or executive, he is supposed to get a Ciaz car, and he should get a MIG flat. And if he is the accountant of the company, he is expected to have a Desire car and LIG flat. And if he is anybody else in the company, he is expected to have nothing. Poor guy. Anyways, so we return C and H from here. So C will become the car and H will become the house. So if the user has entered E here, he is going to get Ciaz and MIG flat. So this is a simple example to explain the multiple values. This is another example. You can see instead of returning multiple values in multiple variables, we can also return multiple values in a single tuple. So you can see this, instead of returning, this code is same, but instead of dumping it in two different variables, in this case, I am dumping it in single variable. So as soon as I dump the multiple results in a single variable, it will turn into a tuple. So you can see here, when I display print C, BMW and bungalow is displayed as tuple. So both the examples are very close to each other. Only difference is, in the first example, I was dumping the results which are coming with multiple values in multiple variables. In the second example, I am displaying multiple values coming from the function dumped in a single variable. So when it is dumped in a single variable, it will turn it into a tuple. Next example, let's see how a list can be returned from the function. So let's assume we have L1 with certain values, L2 has certain values, and we are interested in finding out marks of those people who are scholars. So scholars are those who get marks more than 90. So we will pass L1 first as parameter to scholar function, and we'll create an empty list, and one by one we'll extract all the marks, and wherever the marks are going to be more than 90, that will be added in a new list which is known as S, and S will be returned back. Same thing we'll be doing for both the list L1 as well as L2. And when you will be displaying the scholar marks with the from SLR1 and SLR2 lists, it is going to show you only those marks which are going to be marks for scholars. So this is once again a very simple example, but shows that a list is possibly returned from a function. Next, we can also return dictionary from a function. So this is an example. S1 is a dictionary in which there are 4 students' marks, and we are interested in finding out those people who are scholars, their name as well as their marks. In that case, we can make use of this particular example. So we'll be creating one empty dictionary inside the function, and with the help of st.items, we'll try to find out where the values are more than or equal to 90. As soon as we find that, we'll add sk is equal to v. So one by one, each pair of key value will be created, and this key value pair will be only for those students who are getting marks more than or equal to 90. So you'll be having another list dictionary created from here. So you can see here the original list is this, in which Raj is getting 98 and Ram is getting 92. Others are getting less than 90, and that is why the new list which got generated carrying Raj and Ram only. Next, accessing global variable inside a function. Now, if you have a global variable as 10, and if you write L is equal to G plus 20, whenever you will be calling this function, G will be added with 20 and stored in whatever variable you are entering here. So let's run this program. So first statement to be executed in this program will be g is equal to 10. The second statement to be executed in the program will be print main g. So it will be displaying 10. Then I'll be adding in the global variable 30 as the value. It will turn into g plus equal to 30 will make it 40. Then I'm calling test function. Inside the function, the value of g is already 40. It will be added with 20. It will make it 60. So L will be displayed as 60. So you can see here local displayed as 60. When I come back from there, main will remain whatever it is because we did not make any change in g further. This is another example where we are trying to make use of g as the name for global variable as well as local variable. So the program will start with the first statement here, g is equal to 10. The second statement, it will display g, that is 10. G will be added with 5, it will turn into 15. Then I am calling test1. When I am calling test1, the control will move from here to here. And this will be a local g, it is not global g. So g is 20. When I will display test1 g, it will be 20 only. I come back and try displaying g. So it is not going to display 20 because that g was a local variable. So the global variable is still with 15. So it displayed 15. Then I am changing the global variable, which was 15. I am turning it into 25. When I call test2, test2 again has a g, but this g is again a local variable, which will have its existence within this function only. So test2 g will be 30. When I come back after this call in the main function, the print statement will display the original value of global variable, that is 25. Now, this example is very important for you to understand. Think about you have a global variable and this global variable is a immutable type. G is 100. 100 means integer and integer is immutable type. If you are trying to make use of this g inside the function, when I was writing g is equal to 10 or g is equal to 20 inside, it was perfectly fine because it was treating it as a local variable. But if I am trying to do g plus equal to 20 here, it will not be permissible. Reason of that is for this g should exist as a mutable parameter, mutable variable. As g is not a mutable variable inside the function, it is not going to allow you to modify. And that is why you will get unbound local error. If it would have been a mutable parameter, it would have been allowed. But as it is a immutable parameter, it will not be allowed. And that is why as soon as you try calling function 1, very first statement of function 1, it will show unbound local error. Now, to fix this particular problem, what you need to do is you simply write g is equal to 100 on top. As soon as you enter in the function and you want g to be treated as global variable within the function as a mutable parameter, then in that case, we'll be writing global g. Now this time, after taking g is equal to 100, it will come back here, and while displaying print g, it will display 100. G plus equal to 10, it will make it 110. When you will display g here, it will be 110. When you call function 1, g is already 110. It will be added with 20. It will turn into 130. When I display print g here, it will be displaying 130. And whatever change happened to g will be reflected here also. So the last value which will be displayed will also be 130. Now, the similar example, but this time we are going to take a mutable data type. So G is a global variable here also, but this time G is a mutable parameter or variable. In this case, it is a mutable variable. So what will happen? G as a global variable containing 100 and 200. And here, when I display main G, it will be 100 and 200. Suppose I have another variable with the value as 10. I'm passing this as parameter. And inside the function raise, I am incrementing in G0 value and G1 value. No error as unbound error. And after this change, when I display the value of G here, it will be 110 and 210. When I come out of this function and display the value of G, whatever changes has happened inside the function will be reflected in the global variable. So you can see here, once again, 110 and 210. Another example, we are taking here dictionary. So if dictionary is a global variable, then inside the function, it will be not requiring global keyword. So it will be directly modified by us. So original G is containing tap as 75 and RAM as 82. When I pass R as parameter to this, so tap is incremented by R and RAM is incremented by R. So after raise, you can see 75 became 85, 82 became 92. And then when I come back to the main function, the G as changed here will be reflected here also. So basically, whenever you have an immutable global variable, you will require global keyword. And if you have a mutable variable as global variable, in that case, inside the function, there'll be no need of writing global keyword. Next, let's compare these two codes, because children will be smart and they would try to do such kind of thing in which they will compare the parameter and the global and local variable. You can look at this example where I is 90, that is a global variable, and when I'm calling test I, and I is passed as parameter here, J, so it will turn into, J will become 90 plus 90, that is 180. So inside the function, it will be displaying the value of J as 180. And if I come back to the main part of the code and display value of I, it will remain 90 because I did not make any change in that particular variable. When I look at this second one, where we are making the change in I and see the result inside the function and outside the function, I see the changes reflected because I have already used global keyword here. One more code to compare. This time we have a list and we are trying the similar kind of thing in which I is defined as 90 and 100. I am passing I as the parameter. I became J inside the function and I am making changes in J0 and J1. So 90 became 100 and 100 became 120. So inside the function as well as outside the function, I get the same result. Instead of passing it as parameter, if we try using global I here, then also same thing will happen. If I don't use global I here, then also the same thing will happen. Okay. Now, quick questions. Can we have same name for a global object which pre-exists as built-in? Answer is yes. Can we have same name for a local object which is pre-exists as global variable? Yes. Can local scope use the same name for identifiers in global and local? Now, once again, I'll read this line for you. Can local scope use the same name for identifiers in global and local? Answer is no. Can we access global object inside a function without using global keyword? Answer is yes. Access means as a value. Can we modify global objects containing immutable value inside a function without using global keyword? Answer is going to be no. As we have global keyword, do we have a keyword with the name local too? Answer is no. However, there is a keyword with the name non-local, but it has a different meaning. Can we use global keyword for naming a new variable as identifier? Answer is no, because global is a keyword. Let's quickly go through default parameter. So what is default parameter? Default parameter is nothing but when we require some default values to the function arguments or parameters, we make use of default parameter. And the argument or parameter becomes optional during the function call, which means it is not mandatory to pass that as argument or parameter during the function call. So you can see here one example where calc is my function, n is a parameter, which already carrying a default value. So if I do not pass anything as parameter, it will be taken as 5. But if I am passing some parameter here, it will be taken as this value. So first time it will take it as 2. So 2 multiplied by 5, 10 will be displayed. Second time when I'm passing nothing, it is going to be taking as 5, and 5 into 5, 25 will be displayed. In the second example, when I have two default parameters, m is equal to 2, n is equal to 5. In this case, if I pass single parameter, the first one will be assigned. So 3 will be taken as m, and n will become 5. So it will be 3 into 5 as 15. And second time when I am passing no parameter, it is going to be 2 into 5, that is 10. And third time when I am passing 4 and 8, it is going to be 4 multiplied by 8, that is 32. So in one single line, this answer will be displayed because of this end is equal to star is displayed. So 15, 10, and 32 will be the results for this. So rule 1 of default parameter is default parameters cannot be before non-default parameter. That means if you're writing m is equal to 2 and you are leaving n unattended, then in that case you will get a syntax error, which is named as non-default argument follows default argument. The second rule is while using multiple default parameters, if we provide value to one of the default parameter or argument through a function call, it overrides the leftmost default value of the default parameter. Like in this case, when I'm passing none, a is assigned as 1, b is assigned as 2, c is assigned as 3. When I'm passing 5, a is overwritten by 5 and b and 2 remain with 2 and 3. In third call, when I'm passing 10 and 20, a will be overwritten by 10, b will be overwritten by 20, c will remain 3. In the third one, all of them will be overwritten, right? So that is how these answers. This is a simple example of the similar kind where we are passing a default parameter as 5. So if I draw a line with 2, so it is going to display 2 times dashes. If I pass nothing, it will be 5 times dashes. If I pass 10, 10 times dashes will be displayed. This is another example where we have two default parameters, and one I am having as string type, another having numeric type. So if I am passing star and 2, it is displaying 2 stars. If I am passing nothing, it is going to be 4 times dashes. If I am passing hash, it is going to be 4 times hashes. If I am passing 4, it is going to be 4 into 4, that is 16. If I am passing calm as the parameter, then calm will be printed 4 times. If I am passing a tuple in this, the tuple will be multiplied by 4, and 4 times the same sequence of values will be generated. Next, think about if we have 2 parameters and one is default and one is non-default. Obviously, the non-default is going to be the first one. So in this case, if I am passing star, it is going to be star 4 times. When I am passing hash, hash is going to be displayed 8 times. When I am passing 5 and 6, so 5, 6 are 30 will be displayed. When I am passing nothing, here there will be type error because the first parameter is must here, right? So as soon as such kind of situation occurs, it shows a type error. Now, if the default parameter is required to be list type, this is the kind of thing you will see. If I do not pass any parameter in this, it is going to show your default resident of Delhi, India. And if you are passing New York and US, it is going to be resident of New York, US. If you're passing a tuple, then also it will give you the same answer as London and UK. If you're passing a dictionary. Now here dictionary is a very peculiar dictionary. It is not a normal dictionary. If you are writing 0 Pune and 1 India, it is fine. But suppose in place of 0 and 1, you write anything else here, it will be error. If you are simply passing a string here with 2 characters, it will work. It will display resident of A, comma B. But if you write 3 characters here in the string, it will be error. In the same way, if you are trying to specify 2 different strings separated by comma, it will be error because it is expecting a single value as the parameter. So single value can be a tuple, can be a list, can be a dictionary, can be anything. But as soon as you write Mumbai and India separated by comma, it will not be taken as tuple. If you wanted Mumbai and India to be taken as tuple, you would have put it inside another round braces, or you would have put inside square braces if you wanted to take it as list. So last one will be error. Second last one will become error if you have more than 2 characters in the string or less than 2 characters in the string. Third last will become error if you take the key different than 0 and 1. In that case, this will also turn into error, right? So last 3 examples have to be very, very carefully dealt with. Now, let's come to positional argument. Positional argument is nothing but, in all the previous examples of function before this slide, we have seen using positional argument where the values of the function call are assigned to the corresponding identifiers used in the parameters or arguments of the function from left to right. So you can see if I'm writing 10, 20, 30, 40, 10 goes to A, 20 goes to B, 30 goes to C, and 40 goes to D. This is what has been happening in all our previous examples. So this is similar kind of example. It's just to show you that corresponding values are assigned. But suppose you don't want to go this traditional way, you have to use named or keyword parameters or arguments. So named and keyword parameters are used to specify parameters or argument names, specific values in a function call, so that it can be assigned to a specific arguments in the list. Its order does not matter. That means whether first parameter comes before or second parameter comes before, it does not matter. Like in this particular case, we have written this particular function for calculating the value of D in quadratic equation, which is requiring values of A, B, and C. Think about if we are writing quad B is equal to 3, A is equal to 1, and C is equal to 2. So basically, the value 1 will go to A, value 3 will go to B, value C will go to, value 2 will go to C. In the second example, where we have P, Q, R as 3 integers, and you wanted C to take value from P, B to take value from Q, A to take value from R. So accordingly, this correspondence will take place. So the idea is that in whatever order you are putting the parameters, if you are attaching a name, which is the name given inside the function, it will automatically map it with respective values. This is another example of generic positional parameter or argument. Generic means you are not sure how many parameters will be passed by the person who is using this function. You're not sure whether it is going to be 1 parameter, 2 parameter, 3 parameter, 4 parameter, or 5 parameter. In that case, you can make use of star operator along with the parameter As soon as you do that, this star will allow you to pass any number of parameter while passing from the actual function call. So if you are writing 23, 23 is coming here. And if you try finding out the data type, which is automatically assigned to this P, you will see tuple as the data type. And if you write for I in P, print I, it is going to display 23 only. In the second example, where we are having multi, 30, 4.2 and Amar, these are the three parameters. So for you, these are three parameters, and here it will be clubbed into a single collection of type tuple, where 32, 4.2 and Amar will be enclosed inside round brackets. And that is why if you try displaying value data type of P, it is going to show you tuple. So if I write for I in P, the first line you will see 30, second line you will see 4.2, third line you will see Amar. So basically the output will come like this. So class tuple is the data type, 23 is the content, and second call is showing you class tuple as the first line of print statement, and then with the help of loop 30, 4.2 and Amar is displayed. Another example of the similar kind, this time I don't know how many values I am supposed to be adding. So what I am doing, I am leaving it as open-ended generic positional parameter. So I am writing here star n. If I am passing a single parameter, the single value will be added. If I am passing two parameters, 5 and 8 will be added. If I am passing three parameters, all three values will be added. So first time when 2 is passed, it formulates a tuple like this. When you pass two parameters, it formulates a tuple like this. When you pass more than three parameters, it is going to be forming a tuple like this. So finally, when you display output of this, it is going to be like this. So in first case, it is adding 2 with 0. So 2 is the answer. Second time, 5 and 8 are added. So 13 is the answer. Third time, it is adding 10 plus 20 plus 50 plus 25. And that is how 105 becomes the answer. Next example of the similar kind. This time we are planning to add all those values which are passed as parameters which are divisible by 10. So we are having a generic positional parameter with star. I am passing three values here, 20, 34 and 90. So it is checking 20 is divisible by 10, so 20 will be added. 34 and 19 will not be added. So when you'll return the final result, it will be showing only 20. Second time when I'm passing 5, 80 and 3, only 80 will be the result because this is the only number which is divisible by 10. Next time 10, 50 and 20 will be added because all of them are divisible by 80. Now we have modified the same example. This time I am expecting that user might enter some non-supported data type. For example, string does not support such kind of addition with numerical values. So if I am passing 20, 34, 90, there is no problem. All those which are divisible by 10 will be added. When I am passing 5, A and 30, 5 will not be added because 5 is not divisible by 10. A will not be added because it is unsupported data type. 30 will be added because it is supported data type as well as divisible by 10. I hope it is fine. In the last example where we are passing big, 24, 50 and 20, for big, it will show you error as unsupported data type, and 24 will not be added because it is not divisible by 10. 50 and 20 will be added because both of them are supported data type and are divisible by 10. So 50 and 20 will be added and the final result will be 70. So these kind of generic things you can do with the help of generic positional parameters. Now, there is a generic named or keyword parameter also, which makes a dictionary. Like you saw in case of generic positional parameter, it forms a tuple. In case of generic named or keyword parameter, it forms a dictionary. So by putting double star in front of the parameter of the function definition, you get generic named or keyword parameter. So you can see this example where I am passing multi. I am writing name as Suraj, fee as 3000, and type as guest. So when I pass this to the function, it gets accumulated in a single variable which is named as P. So if I display the data type, it is going to be dictionary. If I say P, it will show me the content in the form of a dictionary. And if I want to traverse through the entire content, I will be writing the similar kind of syntax which I would have written for dictionary, that is k comma v in p dot items. It will show us the key on this side and value on this side. Now, that does not mean that you pass a dictionary as it is. Just look at the second case where I have a dictionary as S, where INO is 11, item is pen, and quantity as 40. So if I write stock is equal to S, it will work. But this time, my dictionary will carry only one key, and that key is going to be stock. And the value of that particular key will become the entire content of my new dictionary. Just notice the difference between the first one and the second one. In the first one, name and Suraj was the key value pair, fee and 2300 was the key value pair, and type and guest was the key value pair. Whereas in the second case, stock is the key and value is the entire dictionary, right? So it formulates dictionary. That does not mean that you pass a dictionary as parameter, right? So the result, now look at this one, the result. The class is dictionary and you are able to see the entire content with the help of this print p. And with the help of loop, you are able to see name Suraj, fee as 3000 and type as guest. The second example, when we are showing the result, it is simply running the loop only once because there is only one key value pair and the key is stock and the value is the entire dictionary, right? So this is very important for you to notice. Next example of the similar kind, where we have P is as a normal parameter and E as the generic keyword parameter. So if I am passing level as 2, bonus as yes, I come inside and display the value of E. So entire content of E will be displayed. And if the type of level is found to be integer and level is supposed to be divisible by 5, in that case, points will be incremented by 10 and you will display a message as awarded so many points. If E bonus is found to be yes, then P will be P multiplied by 2 and you will be displaying a message as awarded P points. And finally, you'll be returning P so that P is going to have new value stored here. So in this particular case, why we required this particular statement in the beginning for check whether it is right data type or not, look at the last function call. In the last function call, I am not passing level as the key. If I am not passing the level and I would have tried checking the divisibility by 5, it would have given me error. And as I wanted that error not to come, I just introduced one more check over here. So instead of using try and except, I introduced a check over here, which is checking whether the type of level. So, you know, if you write get and if you do not get a matching key, it will return none. Whereas if I would have written type of E level, E square bracket level, it would have shown me error. And that is the reason instead of using directly E level, data type of E level, I tried extracting it with the help of E.get. So E.get will allow me to return none kind of thing. And that is how it will become false. It will not go to the second check and it will not terminate. So it will directly move to the next statement where we are checking bonus. Okay. So with this, the output is going to be coming like this. So you can see, first of all, in the first step, 0 points got accumulated. In the second call, level becomes 5 and 10 points are awarded. And in the third call, level becomes 10 and 20 points awarded and 40 points awarded. In the last call, it will display bonus and yes and awarded 80 points. This is the last example. And it is once again a very simple example. You can see there is a dictionary with the name Q, which is containing name and score. Name is numeric and score is 12 and 34. So here when I'm passing this, and if I try displaying this content, it is going to be as it is displayed. Whereas in the second case, when I'm writing Q1 is equal to Priya, Q2 is equal to 45, Q3 is equal to 2356, and Q4 is equal to 34.5. Now, you can see here, I have tried exploring all the data types within this. And all this will turn into dictionary when it is passed to details. So it is going to be displayed as dictionary over here. And when you will run a loop, you will be seeing these values displayed along with Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 as keys. With this, we end the session. I hope you like the session. And as you already know that the next session is going to be on text file and binary file. And we'll be working on some questions which are going to be close to small projects. So it will be containing all kind of operations starting from creation, displaying, updation, appending, searching, all those kind of operations which will ensure that your children are able to make projects based on this.